So here's an example of what I'm talking about, right? You can consider this an aspect on my journey through Judaism. Going through this suffering and reaching out to churches for help, only for every church without exception to fail to be honest about the fact that marijuana was setting off my schizophrenia and therefore actually help me achieve a marijuana free life, which means no involuntary secondhand exposure. All churches failed on that. All Christian slash Catholic churches I've gone to. It's like they were owned by the same people and were corrupted by the same individuals, the same agendas that were corrupting the state. Also corrupted the church. But that led me to Judaism, along with realizing the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, and so it was like the Christians and Catholics kind of stole the religion and the God of the Jews and like made it their own. Like, oh no, you're wrong and we're right about the books you wrote. Yeah. But with the same thing with Judaism, I reached out to synagogues for help, not just Chabad either, and they didn't help at all. They helped even less than the Catholics and the Christians. The Catholics and the Christians, at least, like, gave me money and food and things like that. But yeah, the Jews were just like, screw you, you're a Gentile, get out of here. Like, and so when I get on YouTube, which of course my journey into the history of Jews and Judaism got me to Dr. Henry Abrams' channel, I believe his name is. Here I am, suffering insanely, and no Jews are helping me because they are profiting off the problems that I'm suffering from. They're not going to stop those problems and give up their profits voluntarily. Just like the marijuana addict will not quit his marijuana voluntarily, the Jews, the rich, wealthy, powerful, plutocracy Jews, as well as whites and whoever else is up there, but it's largely Jews, let's be honest, will not voluntarily let go of their stranglehold and monopoly on power. The force is the only thing that can make that happen, coercion, and it won't happen because this stranglehold means they have pretty dominant, implementation of force when necessary. So, while that was going on, I'm seeing Dr. Henry Abrams is like, oh, we got this cruise going on down the Rhone River, right? Like Jews are just living this wealthy, luxurious life. Tovia Singer is making money off of Torah, which goes against what the rabbis told me about do not trust anyone who uses the Torah to make money. Yet Tovia Singer is out here, pimping it out like it's a whore, like he's a pimp, and the Torah is his prostitute, right? Like, okay. And another sign of that was, of course, how he's converting blacks, even though rabbis in Israel have told me that the word Cushi is the N word because the curse of Ham goes to blacks, right? The curse of Ham looked at Noah naked. So you see these little details, contradictions, and everything. But I did end up attending a synagogue, a Reform synagogue on Zoom meetings in North Carolina. I believe it was in Greenville. And there's all the red flags about the reforms, and this one in particular. The biggest red flag was that they had an interfaith dialogue with anybody, Christians, whatever, even though Judaism teaches that you're not supposed to share a dialogue with idolaters, right? People who worship idols. And they see Christianity as idolatry. It's false to worship a man as God, and so forth and so on. But that didn't stop the reformists, of course. And so I attended a couple of their Zoom meetings because, unlike Chabad, they had like no standards whatsoever. They would have converted me with like little to no money and all this stuff, right? But that Rabbi Harley, he was all about pushing marijuana legalization. Now, just on a side note, for me, it's very entertaining when Jews confirm everything the anti Semites say is true, only much more so. And Rabbi Harley and the Reformed Judaism was a perfect example of that. He didn't care at all about the lives that marijuana legalization destroys. He didn't care about the harms, the impacts, the rising homicide rates, the schizophrenia, the rising homelessness, welfare dependence. We're seeing destructive downstream consequences already, like Colorado with the methamphetamine overdose death rate skyrocketing. Washington State had the homicide rate go up 40% as a result of marijuana legalization. He didn't care. He only said billions of dollars for the state. That's all they care about is money. Not they as in Jews, but they as in these particular Jews. And white people too, also greedy. Everyone has greed. It's not a race thing. But Rabbi Harley also discussed how the Jews, his words exactly, his Reformed Judaism synagogue was very strong on pushing gay marriage in the United States, how they were basically behind it, which confirms what the anti Semites say, that Jews are the ones behind the LGBTQ agenda in the United States, what the white supremacists call globo homo, right? The gay agenda. It's true. It exists. It's a real thing. It's being taught in schools, Hollywood, etc. You could see the implementation of the agenda everywhere you go. Kind of hard to miss. And he very specifically said that back in the 90s, they were the ones who started rewording it as same sex marriage because that was more, intellectually palatable. It was a psychological manipulation. And that basically helped them change the minds of the masses, their use of media. That those were his words, not mine. And later on he had this thing where he discussed that he was in Israel and the rabbis were against teaching women Torah, so he was a rabbi that was rebellious or whatever. Reform rabbi is rebellion, right? And he was handing Torah scrolls to women on little sticks. And I'm just thinking, man, this guy is like the opposite of Judaism. Like everything he's teaching here goes against the tenets of the faith he claims to be a part of. And it's the same thing in Catholicism and Christianity. You see a lot of this stuff, universal dynamics and all these structures. But that really made me realize that there's no point in going to the Jews for help. Get away from marijuana. I tried with Rabbi Harley, and he gave me the number to some black guy in Greenville, and I wasn't, racist or nothing, but my experience with people with color, including my own color, was not one of a high success rate when it comes to getting away from drugs. And but I was like, you know what, let's give it a shot. I called that guy. I couldn't understand half of what he was saying because his accent was so thick, Ebonics. And that's not to be racist, just true. I just couldn't understand what he was saying. And he failed to help me. He couldn't get me into marijuana free housing, drug free housing. He was just like everyone else. He refused to even comprehend it, right? And so here I am going through all this struggling and suffering. And what are the Jews doing? They're taking luxury cruises down the Rhone River. They are on a World Torah tour. Like, uh, yeah. And so, I mean, I can't go back to Catholicism or Christianity with the hope that they will succeed where the Jews failed, or vice versa. They're all corrupt. Jews, Christians, Gentiles, blacks, whites, etc. They're all corrupt. And so the least I could do is hope and pray that I get to, you know, end up at a place with less corruption, like Russia, Malaysia actually arrested their, election theft attempt people and things like that. So you see a lot of these signs of moral superiority in China, Russia, Singapore, etc., that are not present in the American, society in modern times. And that's because the West has become corrupted from within. Pornography, drugs, etc. Social media, a big part of that. So I don't know.